This major Mercedes Mone AEW rumor has been absolutely killed. And it all comes down to one thing, and one thing that Mercedes Mone has been alleged to do so for her entire run in AEW. Now, I understand that Mercedes Mone has only taken a few losses since joining the company, and this has led to some fans assuming she refuses to lose or quote-unquote do the job. This has not only been something that has been over Mercedes Mone, but if you go down the history books of wrestling from Bruno to Hogan to, Austin, The Rock, Triple H, Roman, Cody, you name it, there's always been this assumption. And most of the time, it's wrong. But with Mercedes Mone having a stronghold on not only AEW, but also other these different promotions in which she's working for, fans have assumed, hey, she just don't want to do the job. Well, according to a report by Dave Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, that assumption is incorrect, and it also backs up a recent Fightful Select report. Responding to a fan question comparing the Hurt Syndicate to past AEW runs, from people like Miro and Aleister Black and others, Meltzer pointed out how Bobby Lashley hasn't been pinned in AEW. Neither he nor Shelton Benjamin were included in the Continental Classic. He explained that entering the round-robin tournament guarantees taking losses unless you win it outright, which is why he says that certain wrestlers tend to avoid it. Mone, on the other hand, is not one of those talents, despite being the TBS champion in a reign of over 545 days and holding 13 titles, maybe even more by the time you hear this. Well, there's been a lot of speculation that this chick just don't want to put others over. And this is what he had to say. I know some people jump on Mercedes, but Mercedes loses when the time is right. I've never heard of any problems with Mercedes losing, but you shouldn't be beating Mercedes often. Now, Mone has taken losses in AEW, including a recent one at Full Gear against AEW Women's World Champion Chris Statlander. She also put over Timeless Toni Storm in their Women's World title match earlier this year. I know that Mercedes Mone is a very controversial figure in the pro wrestling industry and in the landscape, and especially with AEW, right? AEW, as we all know, gets a ton of flack and just a bunch of shit from all these people. But I will say that if you just look at the circumstances, she is actually doing more to help the promotion than she is to, quote unquote, hurting it or taking away from it. And I know that that's hard to see sometimes, especially when someone is booked as strongly as Mercedes Mone. But I also think that there's just a bunch of this crap out there where people are just going after her and going after AEW because, well, why not? It's the cool thing to do. It's the fun thing to do, or it gets engagement, right? And everyone wants engagement. And you have all these farm Facebook pages, and they go after Mercedes, and they go after AEW, and they talk all this trash, and all it is noise. It's noise in an ecosystem. And I think and I struggle with this as well, like, when you work online or you're online all the time, I think there is a thing of like, well, this is the world, right? And it's like, if you just take an hour and you just deplug, you'll realize that this is such a small portion of life, right? And another thing, it's like, I understand most people, hey, they got Facebooks or they got Twitters or they got Instagrams or they got TikToks or whatever, right? Including my own grandmother. She has a Facebook, but they don't necessarily live in an ecosystem in which is pertain to social media. And I think younger generation, including myself who's 30, I think we incorporate that into real life, and it's like, that's not real life. And if you can just keep that in perspective, I think it will help mental health out there. Not to go on a spill about mental health, but it's like this Mercedes Mone thing, the hatred towards her and the criticism towards her is just ridiculous. And I think if you can look past that, I think a lot of people are going to be well better off for it. And when it comes to Mercedes Mone, if you just look at it and go, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Because if you look at where AEW is going with Mercedes Mone, and I fully believe that this is where they're going with her, I think she's in a great spot. I really, really do. Because I think it's pretty clear cut in the direction in which they're going with Mercedes Moné, which is, okay, Moné holds all these titles. And Moné, she keeps going after one title, but it doesn't matter who the champion is. It could be Timeless Toni Storm, it could be Chris Statlander, it could be whoever. She just can't quite win the big one, right? She can win the TBS championship, and that's great. And she can win all these different championships from all these different promotions, and that's great. But she just can't get it done when the spotlight is on her the brightest, when the biggest stage is set, when the biggest prize in at least her ecosystem and in AEW is on the line. She just can't pull the trigger quite enough to get the job done. And when you have a situation like that, it sets up some very, very interesting storytelling and storylines and different directions and different programs and different feuds. And that's what AEW is doing with Mercedes Moné. And I think if you look at it and you go, okay, they're really telling a story here. And as someone who has been very, very critical of AEW and, in my opinion, their perception that I don't think they know how to tell proper stories all the time, I do believe that Tony Khan is in this situation in which he looks at two guys or two gals or a tag team or a multi-man or whatever the case may be and go, okay, what matches do I want to see? What matches do I want my fans to see? What matches do my fans want to see? Okay, well, I'm going to book that match at this date, and then I'm going to book backwards, and I'm going to try to fit a story that will lead to that match rather than, hey, this is an interesting person, and oh, hey, here's an interesting person. Let's put them in a storyline. Okay, that storyline makes sense. Okay, this is when we'll do the match. I think that's the way that Tony operates, and I think in a lot of ways that does hurt the product and hurts AEW. Like if you look at that, okay, I would agree with that for the most part. But I would also say that there are instances, including in which we are in the middle of with Mercedes Moné, where it's like they're telling a true story here. And that true story is Mercedes Moné cannot win the big one. Mercedes Moné can win all these different championships. She can challenge for the AEW Women's World Championship often. She can put up a heck of a fight, but she just can't quite get it done. So what's going to happen, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of other people's opinions as well, it's like she's going to lose all these titles, and then she's going to be able to win the big one. And she's going to then go after the AEW Women's World Championship. And if you can do that, well, then I think you're cooking. And I think you have some serious, serious heat going on. So we'll pay attention to it. We'll keep an eye on it. And we'll see if they ultimately end up doing that. And if that's the case, then I think it's something pretty interesting.